Welcome back. For those of you that are new to me, my name is Natasha, and this channel is really a family vlog, a homeschool vlog, and things that I'm most passionate about, like cooking, gardening, and homeschool. I do plan on making a lot of videos about homeschool, but I thought it would be best before I started that to kind of go into what kind of homeschooling that I'm doing. And one day, about a year ago, a group of women that I had met who were all homeschoolers had told me to read the book called The Well-Trained Mind. And that's this book right here. And after reading that book, I was head over heels excited. I knew that that was exactly what I wanted to do. And a big reason why I want to make homeschooling videos surrounding that is because I actually couldn't find a lot of homeschooling channels that chose this method of homeschooling. And so the method of homeschooling that I have chosen is actually called the classical method or classical model of homeschooling, which is the oldest and most original form of education, I believe starting with the Greeks. It's based on the learning development of children. And so what it says, it's called the trivium. And what it says is that the early stages of learning development, which would be from, say, kindergarten to, I believe, grade 4 or 5, I'll have to actually go back and look, but the early stages, early elementary, is considered the grammar stage. And what that means is that in that stage of learning development, a child is able to retain a wealth of information and a wealth of knowledge. Their memories are the best memories that they'll ever have. If you ever ask your kids things, I'm sure you know, you're amazed at the things that they can remember. And as we age, we actually lose the ability to memorize as well as we did when we were in those ages. And so the concept is to fill them up with facts and knowledge and language and ideas, and they retain all those things. Now, they may not understand all the things that they're retaining, but they are retaining a lot of those things. And in the grammar stage, there's a focus on memorization and a lot of reading, a lot of reading. Moving on from the grammar stage is the logic stage, and in that stage the kids begin to take all that knowledge that they have retained and start to actually understand the meanings of them, and being able to understand the whys and the hows, and they start to piece together all that problem solving, and that would begin, I think it is around grade 6 up to grade 8, and that's when you then cycle through that information that you taught them in the early years and go over it again, and they're like, aha! That's when they have the aha moment, and they're able to understand what it is that they were taught, and they can say, oh, I remember it, I understand why that happened and why those things happened in history and all of those kinds of things. The next stage, which is the high school level learning of development, is called the rhetoric stage, and that is when they take all of the facts, all of the logic, the whys and the hows, and then they start putting that into practice and being able to have thoughts for themselves, create their own ideas, make their own statements, come up with things. This is when they're the most creative, when they're able to really discover deeper meanings, hidden meanings behind all the facts and the logic that they have learned through the years. So those are the stages. That's what the classical model tries to do, and it's based on those stages of learning. It is the only homeschooling model that does base stages of learning this way. A lot of learning in the early stages is based on creativity, and it's not that our kids aren't creative, but they're actually regurgitating the facts that they're being told. They're not often new pieces of information, new knowledge. They're really not creating. They're seeing images, they're learning things, and then they're putting that back out on paper. So it's not that your child's not creative, and I don't want to say that you shouldn't be creative and you shouldn't do arts and crafts and things like that in the early stages, but learning to be based on that, to expect a child to create, to have original thought, to dig deeper and understand the whys and the hows too early is not at their learning developmental stage. And so we gradually build on that, and the time where you can fill them with the most knowledge that they'll ever retain is at the early years. So I'm not going to go into great detail about each subject today. I'll make a video about each subject if that's something that you might be interested in the future, but I'll just show you some of the things. So first of all, The Well-Trained Mind, who's been written by Susan Bauer, and she homeschooled her own kids using the classical method, and then Jessie Weiss here, the other second author, is actually her grown-up adult daughter who was homeschooled by her mother through this, and they both write books together about the classical model of education. Come sit, come sit. And in the book, they really give you a step-by-step understanding of how to apply this classical model of education at each age and grade level. And then they give you recommendations, and it's not just a single recommendation. This is the book you must buy. No, they give you a range based on what your child might be like, because they understand that all kids are different. They understand that all kids learn in a different way. Some kids are kinetic. Some kids, right at the moment I'm not going to remember all of the vocabulary behind it, but we know that kids learn in a different way. Some kids learn by visual, by sight. Some kids learn by hands. Some kids learn auditory by listening. And some people are a mix of all three. And so they know that, and they know that there are different learning styles and different learning speeds and different passions and interests. So they recommend different books based on how you have assessed your child, and you can change it up, because sometimes we think we know that our children, and then they go ahead and change, and then we need to kind of change up our homeschool and do something completely different. And so these are the books that I have selected that were recommended by Susan Bauer in this book that follow the classical model of education. So I'm just going to show them to you. I'm not going to go into them too much, and if you'd like, I will do a deeper in-depth review of each book that I've chosen. So first and foremost, the big subject that everybody wants to hear about, I think, is math. So I have chosen Singapore mathematics. This one is called the Primary Mathematics, and Singapore mathematics actually has developed, I believe, 3 different systems of math. They're all teaching the same types of things, but with different, slightly different versions. This is their original version that they have put out, that's been out the longest. I chose it because it's been tried and tested, and we really like it a lot so far this year. So Singapore math, I have another book which I didn't bring outside with me. There's 2 kinds of ways to teach math. There is a conceptual way of teaching math, which means you're teaching a deeper understanding, the why math is the way that it is, and the how math is the way that it is, and understanding, looking at math in a variety of ways from both sides, from all angles, and then knowing how to put it back together and really understand, which helps in problem solving. And then there's a procedural math. And procedural math basically hammers out into your child understanding how to do the procedure, how to do your times tables, memorizing all those facts, how to do algebra, memorizing the steps, do this step, this step, this step, and this is the steps, and you'll always get the right answer, without really focusing too much on the how and the why and the logic underneath. And a book that I had read about mathematics is that a lot of North American teachers, when asked, why is the answer this? Why are you getting always, and they actually most of them had a difficult time explaining. But when it came to teachers in China and Singapore and countries that were following this conceptual type of math, they could explain very clearly, and they actually could understand how to do math very well to higher levels, whereas a lot of math teachers actually will say they don't understand the math. They can do it, they can understand the procedure, but when it comes to understanding a deeper level, as you go higher and higher on in the grades, they actually have a hard time explaining it. They just know how to do it without actually explaining it out in words. And you might say, well, do you have to explain it out in words? But children having that deeper understanding will actually be more successful in their math in the future. Eliana decided that she wanted to go inside with her sisters, so I'm going to continue. Well, I won't be long now. This is part of the language arts program. Basically, so I have here, this one is now my Olivia, my 6-year-old. I didn't really need this for because she started reading quite well past 2 years, and I got this just to make sure we covered all the bases, but it turned out she didn't need it. But it's called The Ordinary Parent's Guide to Teaching Reading. I do highly recommend it. This is by Jessie Weiss and Sarah Buffington. Jessie Weiss is Susan Bauer's daughter. As I said, they do a lot of the writing of the books. And this is basically a phonics program. It goes through all the sounds and helps them learn all of the phonics, all of the different phonics blends, and teaches them to read. Both of these books use the same kind of idea of how to teach, but the next one is the first language lessons. This one is level 1, which would be for grade 1 level, and I was almost tempted to go straight to grade 2 as well for Olivia. However, there's a few little basics in here. We just want to make sure we get a good foundation before we move on too quickly. So both of these books, they really base the learning process on repetition, 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 repetition. And for us as an adult, it may seem like, oh my goodness, this is monotonous, it's boring, it's just too much, but it really hits at home. They really learn their stuff. And so this one's about all the grammar and all the parts of speech, and we're learning about nouns and common nouns, proper nouns, all that kind of stuff. And it also starts to learn about beginning of narration, which is something I'll get into in another video. But it's something that some different homeschool methods do use. However, it is definitely something that the classical method of homeschooling relies heavily upon is narration. So anyway, but I'll get into that another time. And this spelling book, spelling workout, this is level A, the first level again for grade 1. Way too easy for Olivia. I think we're just going to decide to fly through this one and pick up grade 2 probably in the next month or so, because she already knows the words before I even bother trying to teach them to her. She's the easiest student ever. Anyway, this was recommended by the Well-Trained Mind, spelling workout, just a spelling book. And then a big thing for language arts, heavily recommended, sorry, I'm just looking at my other things here, is reading. Read, 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 and read. So we read aloud in the morning for about an hour, and then I encourage Olivia to try to read every day out loud to me for about 30 minutes every day. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. I'm not strict on that, and I don't think homeschooling should be rigid, because that's the great thing about being at home, is feeling out how each of us feel each day. But what the classical model really wants us to do is to read the classics. Not, so all unabridged versions, good classic books with rich language, with rich vocabulary, nothing that's been washed down. A reason for that is when you read to a child the unabridged version with the full richness of the language and the vocabulary, they might not get it all at first, but they are taking it all in, and you're really helping them to expand on their vocabulary, to expand on their creative way that they will be able to write one day. And it's really giving them a much richer, fuller experience to the reading. Sure, they might get the story a little bit easier, a little bit quicker when you choose to read an abridged version, and they might get the story and, oh, that's a great story, I love the story. However, you're losing that wealth of literature. And so that's a big focus, is reading. And we are reading right now the Chronicles of Narnia, which I loved when I was a kid, and I'm enjoying reading this again with them. I actually forgot a lot about it, so it's really fun, kind of like a cliffhangers at the end of every chapter. We read the first book, second book, and now we're on The Horse and His Boy. by C.S. Lewis. If you've never read this with your kids, it's amazing. It does have a bit of a trickier language. I sometimes have to stop and explain a few things to Olivia, but she's going to learn, and we love it, and she actually is loving it. She gets excited every morning when I'm going to read this to her. Next is science. Now this is not recommended by the Well-Trained Mind. First of all, just quickly say, so the Well-Trained Mind actually recommends that you choose the science, the type of science, and they have sort of an order that they recommend that you go in. For example, you might go into biology, natural earth sciences first, like plants, animals, the human body, that kind of thing. Then you would progress on to maybe the chemistries, and then progress on to with age as you go on. So with young children, they recommend doing like the plants and animals and human body and all that stuff. And so what they actually recommend is that here are the things, the core kind of topics you need to teach your children about. Now you go out and find the books. You go to the library, you get these, what they like to call spines. You get a good thick encyclopedia and you go through it, and maybe one day you're learning about coniferous trees, and so then you're going to go out and find everything you can on coniferous trees, and you're going to go out for a walk and look at coniferous trees and look at the bark and look at the leaves and talk about why they stay green all year rather than, you know, like deciduous trees that lose their leaves and change color. So you go and you just kind of pile on and stack up all the things that you're going to learn about those things, and that's what they recommend. They recommend to have a spine, which would be like an encyclopedia, and branch off from there and just go everywhere looking for the resources. I really was going to do that. I planned on doing that, and then I had joined a homeschool group that just kept talking about apologia, and also the amount of work that would go into doing that other one, but apologia just seemed to have it so well put together. I was going to go with the Well-Trained Mind's idea of starting with the plants and animals and human body, and when I told Olivia that's what we were going to do, she said no. She said I really wanted to learn about space. So that's what we did. This was her passion. We're loving it. And history. I love this book. Now, I haven't done any other history books with kids, so to compare it to something else, I wouldn't know. But Story of the World is very popular. There's a lot of people doing this that aren't even doing the classical model of education. This was also written by Susan Bauer, and what Story of the World does, which I love, and I never got to learn this growing up in school. I believe we got a little bit of Canadian history and social studies, and to be honest with you, nothing more than that. Story of the World is the story of the world. It begins with ancient history, it moves on to medieval history, then it moves on to early modern history, and then postmodern history. And it's done over 4 years. That is our history. And the one last little thing I just wanted to say is I'm so lucky to have a French-speaking mother. My mom speaks French, and she's not here in Ontario. She moved back to where they were from. Anyways, she is teaching Olivia, and I know French as well because my mom is French, so I did grow up being able to speak French. But she is teaching my daughter French classes through Zoom on the computer. And so she does that on Wednesdays, learning French with my mom, and that's just an added little bonus. I think after Christmas I'm going to be adding in computer and typing, because I think she's ready to have an extra little something. We also do music studies, and we do art appreciation and a few other things like that. And that's about everything. I know I kind of flew through it all. If you have any questions at all about this classical education model, or any of the books that I showed you, or any other comments, you liked it, didn't like it, please comment below. Again, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel. There'll be lots more to come, and not just about homeschooling. I do plan on having some videos coming up with some other recipes and garden cleanup and a bunch of things like that. But you know, also let me know what you might be interested in seeing on my channel. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!